They commanded steel beasts weighing 30 tons. They hunted each other across frozen steppes and burning deserts. Some destroyed hundreds of enemy vehicles. Others led entire armies across continents. But the 5 greatest tank commanders of World War II achieved something more than numbers. They changed how wars would be fought for generations to come. One man perfected the tactics. Another turned tank combat into a science. A third built an unstoppable army. The fourth became a legend in a single battle. The fifth remained unknown despite being the deadliest of them all. Before we go deeper into how these 5 commanders rewrote the rules of armored warfare, make sure to subscribe for more history that actually happened. The tank entered World War I as an experiment. It left as a curiosity. 20 tons of riveted steel that moved slower than walking pace and broke down more often than it fired its guns. Most generals in 1918 saw it as a novelty. Infantry still won battles. Artillery still killed most soldiers. Tanks supported both but replaced neither. Then the war ended and armies began thinking about what came next. Some countries scrapped their tank forces entirely. Others built a few hundred and stored them in warehouses. But a handful of officers in Germany, France, Britain, and the Soviet Union saw something different. They saw the future. They understood that if tanks could be made faster, more reliable, and concentrated in large formations, they could shatter defensive lines that had remained frozen for years. The question was not whether tanks would dominate the next war. The question was, who would figure out how to use them first? Germany lost the First World War. The Treaty of Versailles stripped the German military to almost nothing. No tanks, no aircraft, an army limited to 100,000 men. But Versailles could not ban thinking. Throughout the 1920s and early 30s, a handful of German officers studied armored warfare with obsessive focus. They read British theorists like Fuller and Little Hart. They watched Soviet tank exercises. They ran war games with cardboard models because they had no real tanks to train with. One officer stood out above all others, Heinz Guderian. He was not flashy. He did not come from an aristocratic military family. He simply understood machines and movement better than anyone else in the German army. In 1933, he demonstrated prototype tanks to Adolf Hitler. The Nazi leader was transfixed. By 1935, Germany had begun building its first panzer divisions, organizing tanks into concentrated formations supported by motorized infantry, engineers, and self-propelled artillery. Guderian did not invent the tank. He invented blitzkrieg. The concept was simple in theory but revolutionary in practice. Do not spread tanks across the entire front to support infantry. Concentrate them at one narrow point. Break through enemy lines. Drive deep into the rear area before defenders can react. Destroy supply depots, communication centers, and command posts. Force the enemy to collapse from within. Speed and shock, not raw firepower, would win battles. On May 10, 1940, Guderian led 19th Panzer Corps through the Ardennes forest toward the Meuse River. French generals believed the forest was impassable to tanks. Guderian proved them wrong in 3 days. His panzers crossed the Meuse at Sedan on May 13th. By June 22nd, France had surrendered. The campaign that had taken 4 years of grinding attrition in the previous war ended in 6 weeks. Guderian had not just won a battle. He had demonstrated that the era of static trench warfare was over. Mobile armored divisions now dictated the pace and outcome of modern combat. But strategic vision meant nothing without individual skill at the tactical level. While Guderian planned campaigns, other men fought them. In late 1941, a young Soviet tank commander named Dmitry Lavrinenko received his first T-34. He was 27 years old. He had trained as a cavalry officer before transferring to armored forces. On paper, he was one of thousands of Soviet tankers facing the German invasion. In practice, he would become the deadliest Allied tank ace of the entire war. The T-34 was the best all-around tank of 1941. sloped armor that deflected German shells, a powerful 76mm gun, wide tracks that moved easily through mud and snow. But it had serious flaws. The crew was cramped. The commander had to double as the gunner. Visibility was poor. Communication between tanks was nearly impossible because most T-34s lacked radios. German panzer crews were better trained, better organized, and had far more combat experience. The T-34's technical advantages were real, but they were not enough to guarantee victory. Lavrenenko understood this immediately. He studied German tactics. He practiced firing on the move. He trained his crew until they could reload and fire faster than any other tank in his battalion. Most Soviet tankers attacked in massed frontal charges that resulted in catastrophic losses. Lavrenenko used terrain for concealment. He maneuvered to hit German tanks from the side where their armor was weakest. He never attacked without a plan for withdrawal. Between October and December 1941, during the desperate fighting around Moscow, Lavrenenko destroyed 58 German tanks and self-propelled guns. No other Allied tank commander came close. On December 18, 1941, a single mortar fragment struck him in the head during a dismounted reconnaissance. He died instantly. He had been in combat for 2.5 months. His total career as a T-34 commander lasted 75 days. Across the Eastern Front, German tank crews were developing their own aces. Kurt Knispel enlisted in the Wehrmacht in 1940. He was 19 years old. He stood 6 feet tall and was built like a farmer, which he had been before the war. He joined a panzer unit as a loader, the lowest position in a tank crew, responsible for hauling 30-pound shells from storage racks to the breach. Loaders did not aim. They did not command. They lifted heavy objects in cramped spaces while breathing cordite fumes. But Knispel was unusually strong and unusually fast. Within months, he was promoted to gunner. As a gunner, Knispel displayed a rare combination of mechanical precision and tactical intuition. He could estimate range by eye. He understood how to lead moving targets. He knew where to aim on every Soviet tank model to guarantee a kill. Between 1941 and 1943, fighting in Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks on the Eastern Front, he destroyed more than 100 Soviet vehicles. In 1943, he transitioned to the Tiger Ward heavy tank, where his kill count accelerated. The Tiger mounted an 88mm gun that could penetrate any Allied tank from over a mile away. Its frontal armor was nearly invulnerable to most Allied anti-tank weapons. In the hands of a skilled crew, a single Tiger could dominate an entire battlefield. Knispel became a tank commander in 1944. By the time he was killed in April 1945, during the final weeks of the war, he had been credited with 168 confirmed tank kills, the highest total of any tank commander in history. Unlike other German aces, Knispel was never promoted beyond the rank of sergeant. He refused to join the Nazi Party. He was court-martialed twice for defending Russian prisoners of war from abuse by SS guards. He did not fit the propaganda image of a perfect Aryan soldier. So even though he was the deadliest tank ace in the world, his name remained virtually unknown outside his own unit. Meanwhile, on the Western Front, another tank ace was building a very different kind of reputation. Lafayette Poole was a 24-year-old farm boy from Texas. He had joined the Army in 1942 and trained as a tank gunner. By June 1944, he was a staff sergeant commanding an M4 Sherman tank in the 3rd Armored Division. The Sherman was not as heavily armored as the Tiger. Its 75mm gun struggled to penetrate German heavy tanks from the front, but it was fast, reliable, and produced in overwhelming numbers. Poole named his first Sherman "In the Mood" and led his crew through the Normandy breakout with systematic aggression. He did not rely on superior equipment. He relied on speed, positioning, and relentless forward movement. Between June and September 1944, Poole and his crew destroyed 12 German tanks, 258 armored vehicles, and over 1,000 enemy soldiers. He survived the destruction of two Shermans before being severely wounded on September 19, 1944, when a German shell penetrated his third tank near the German border. His left leg was shattered. Surgeons amputated below the knee. Poole survived the war and returned to Texas. He became the highest-scoring American tank ace of World War II, not through technical superiority or heavily armored vehicles, but through audacity and aggressive tactics that mirrored the German blitzkrieg concept. But statistics alone do not capture the full measure of a tank commander's impact. On June 13, 1944, Michael Wittmann was commanding a company of Tiger I tanks near the French town of Villers-Bocage. British forces from the 7th Armored Division were advancing rapidly through the area, attempting to exploit a gap in German lines. Wittmann's unit consisted of only 5 operational Tigers. The British column included over 60 tanks and armored vehicles. At approximately 800 hours, Wittmann spotted the column moving along a narrow road outside Villers-Bocage. He did not wait for reinforcements. He did not coordinate with higher command. He attacked immediately. Driving alone in Tiger No. 205, Wittmann positioned himself on high ground overlooking the road and opened fire. The first British tank exploded. The second reversed into a ditch and was abandoned. Wittmann advanced down the column, firing at close range into the sides and rear of British Cromwell tanks and half-tracks. Within 15 minutes, he had destroyed or disabled at least 13 tanks, 2 anti-tank guns, and 15 transport vehicles. The entire British advance ground to a halt. Wittmann's Tiger eventually took hits and was immobilized in the center of Villers-Bocage. He and his crew escaped on foot. Later that day, German reinforcements arrived and forced the British to withdraw. The battle at Villers-Bocage became one of the most famous single-handed actions in armored warfare history. Wittmann was promoted and awarded Germany's highest military decoration. Propaganda films showcased his exploits. He had been credited with 138 confirmed tank kills by the time he was killed in action on August 8, 1944, when his Tiger was struck by a British tank during Operation Totalize. Yet the most influential tank commander of the war did not command a single vehicle. He commanded entire armies. George S. Patton had served as a tank officer in World War I, leading American tank units in the first U.S. armored assaults at San Miguel in September 1918. He understood the principles of armored warfare before most American officers had even seen a tank. Throughout the interwar period, Patton wrote extensively about tank tactics, mechanization, and the future of mobile warfare. By 1944, at age 58, he was one of the most experienced armored commanders in the U.S. Army. When the Third Army became operational on August 1, 1944, Patton was given command. Over the next 11 months, he would lead it on one of the most aggressive campaigns of the war. Patton understood what Guderian had proven in France. Tanks were not defensive weapons. They were instruments of maneuver. Speed mattered more than firepower. Logistics mattered more than courage. After the breakout from Normandy, Patton's Third Army advanced across France faster than any large military force in history. His tanks covered distances in days that would have taken infantry divisions weeks to traverse. He bypassed strong points. He isolated German garrisons and left them for follow-on forces to capture. His units consumed fuel and ammunition at staggering rates, but they also captured ground at a pace that left German commanders unable to form coherent defensive lines. In December 1944, when German forces launched their final major offensive in the Ardennes, Patton executed one of the most impressive operational maneuvers of the war. He disengaged 3 full divisions from active combat, rotated them 90 degrees, and moved them over 100 miles through winter conditions to relieve the surrounded American forces at Bastogne. The entire movement took less than 72 hours. No other army in the world could have accomplished it. By the time Germany surrendered in May 1945, Patton's Third Army had advanced farther, captured more territory, and liberated more towns than any other Allied army in Europe. Patton had not invented armored warfare, but he had perfected its application on the strategic level. 5 commanders, 5 different approaches to the same problem. Guderian created the doctrine. Lavrinenko proved that skill mattered as much as equipment. Knispel demonstrated the limits of individual excellence in a losing war. Poole showed that audacity could compensate for technical inferiority. Wittmann became a legend in a single engagement. Patton commanded armies the way the others commanded tanks. None of them survived the war unscathed. Guderian was dismissed twice and ended the war in disgrace. Lavrinenko died in his first winter of combat. Knispel was killed 2 weeks before Germany surrendered. Poole lost his leg and never commanded a tank again. Wittmann was obliterated in his Tiger during a massed Allied offensive. Patton died in a traffic accident in December 1945, 6 months after victory in Europe. What they left behind was more important than their individual fates. Guderian's blitzkrieg principles shaped armored doctrine for every major military for the next 80 years. Lavrinenko proved that Soviet tank crews could match or exceed German skill when properly trained and led. Knispel demonstrated that technical superiority meant nothing without strategic resources and industrial capacity to sustain it. Poole showed that mass production and aggressive tactics could defeat superior engineering. Wittmann's legend reminded future commanders that a small force in the right position at the right time could alter the course of a battle. Patton's campaigns proved that operational maneuver at the Army level remained the key to victory even in an era of air power and industrial warfare. The tank had entered World War I as an experiment. It exited World War II as the dominant weapon system on land. These 5 commanders defined how it would be used. Their decisions, their tactics, and their understanding of mobile warfare killed hundreds of thousands of soldiers, destroyed thousands of vehicles, and determined the outcome of entire campaigns. They were not heroes in any simple sense. They were professionals who mastered a new form of combat and applied it without hesitation. War does not reward the merciful. It rewards the competent. And in the matter of armored warfare during World War II, no 5 men were more competent than these. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.